Welcome to North Idaho Experience. In today's episode, Eric and I sit down with Steve M. He is running for Kootenai County Commissioner District 2. Just a disclaimer here, we are not endorsing any candidates. When we talk about politics, we are simply providing info to the public. Get out and vote. Well, I hope you didn't have a girlfriend there, though.
And you know what? The times with my buddies were probably the most special times. We were just a bunch of goofballs.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
So,
4 decades together, man. Good for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm coming up on half that, so, yeah.
Yeah, just keep it, it's not a chore. It's just an undertaking that you have to, it's like watering a plant. You have to water it to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And, just keep working at it.
You'll notice I said coming up on because I honestly can't remember if it's 18 or 19. So I figured I was safe with that. I have to do some mental math. It takes me a minute.
Damn, mine's right around 20. I think it's right at 20.
Yeah.
It's got to be right about there.
I have kids, my children right now, because I have 4. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. And and I have one daughter who lives over in South Hill, and she has our grandson. He's going to be 4 in July. And I tell the others, do you think it'll be soon? Please? Because they all have significant others that they it's like, when's the ring coming?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, God, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
I don't want to be 75 and, 80 years old seeing my grandchild, graduate from high school.
Yeah. Right. No, I hear you.
I'm excited about grandkids. I'm actually looking forward to that at this point.
So when did you guys make the move to Idaho?
Approximately 6 years ago. Okay.
That sounded like such a thing a cop would say, by the way.
It's
approximately.
Yeah.
It's
based on my
coming up
recollection.
on
Can I
6
review
years
my
ago.
report here?
Yes.
Real quick?
Yeah. Refresh my recollection.
Yeah.
But I honestly, one of my best friends, who I've known since 7th grade, my buddy Jeff, he is a banker by trade and senior vice president of a large bank in L.A. He told me over 30 years ago, you need to go to Coeur d'Alene. Check it out. So I started seeing guys in different agencies that I'd worked with that started moving up here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think it's time. I looked at my wife. I'm like, I want to go up there. I want to take a vacation. Let's just go up there. And I had a house in mind that I wanted to look at. And it's actually the house that's up the street from where I currently live. It was on 60 acres, 3,200 square foot. But the elevation was and I know about wells. I'm like, oh, that must be one heck of a deep well. I'm like, maintenance, the whole bit. So we just started driving down the street, and I see a for sale by owner. My Airbnb guy happened to, and he lives over by Ferndale Range. I call him up. I'm like, hey, Lynn, do you think you can get us in tomorrow? Oh, sure. So I started studying the house. It's roughly a 25,000 square foot barn dominium, shop, car lift, the whole bit. Very unique place. I walked into the sunroom and I looked at the gentleman Stanley. I'm like, I'll give you cash for it tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Because we had sold our house in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And Stanley, the previous owner, what he did is that he took vintage hot rods, frame off restoration, and would sell them. I have a 420 square foot room that is a professional paint room.
Wow.
Yeah. We've put a lot of work into the house because it needed some TLC, but it was originally intended to be a horse breeding facility by the first owner. He was a GC, general contractor, and he ended up getting divorced. So he put his wife on the back 20 acres, built her the house back there. My neighbor's house to the west of me was a house that he built for his son, and he subdivided the acreage, and we have approximately 10 acres.
Nice.
On that. And right now I dug out, I have probably I would say between a half acre to a 3/4 acre pond, but I have to take the island out. My intentions are to put I have a pond guy I'm working with, put a tarp down, throw a whole bunch of trout in there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm not a prepper. I tell people that all the time. I'm like,
you're a preparer.
I just want to self-sustain. Mm-hmm. My neighbor up the street does all our pig, cow. He raises them. So we buy a whole pig and cow every year.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
And I'm a nerd, and people think this is kind of strange. I love migration patterns of elk.
That's a very specific thing, sir.
Oh, it is fascinating to watch them, and I love eating elk. But at the end of the street last month, I had, I would say, approximately 100 to 120 right in front of me, 30 foot, had my high beams on, and I'm just sitting there. I'm on my way to work because I get up at 1:30 a.m., out the door at 2:30. I'm on the trash truck at we're out the door at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there and I got the high beams on and like my heart's racing. I'm looking at all these girls and there's mass numbers just in this field. And all of a sudden their heads start looking at me and like a swarm of bees or birds, they start doing this and I'm like, oh, I think it's time to leave. So just quietly went down the street, got on Elder, and took the back route into work.
That's cool.
But I had a bull prancing in front of me on Elder Road, and it was hilarious because he had 7 girls with him. I'm like, oh, I was just laughing. I had to roll down the window and yell out to him, "You're a show-off."
That's awesome. So do you like to hunt?
I haven't hunted, but I have rifles. I've been invited many times by neighbors to go hunting. I just have to, get off my butt, get the elk tag and go.
Yeah.
Or just pick up the bow.
Or just get up earlier.
Yeah.
Just go before work.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So who do you work for right now?
Okay, I work for Spokane City. Their waste management. I'm a trash man for the city of Spokane, or a refuse collector too. Yeah. And the men and women that I work with, it's like working with. And some of the best guys I've worked with were LAPD because I had a home at Northeast Station. It's like working with them. These people are, honest. The integrity. They're hard workers. These people operate like the autos that we have, the big arm that comes out and it picks up the can. You have to know how to operate those things extremely well. I will not graduate up to one. I'm just, I like the running. On an average day when I'm on shift, 4 to 5 miles, I've had shifts where
No way.
Yeah, seriously. I put in up to 20,000 steps in one day and burned over 10,000 calories.
Holy.
People don't realize, it depends upon how hard you want to work. Some guys will walk to the can. No, I run. And one of my supervisors a couple weeks ago came to me and he said, "Hey, Steve, come here. I want to talk to you about something." I'm like, "What?" Chris, our old director. I'm like, "Yeah, he called and wanted to give you props on your work." I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, we service the north side of City Hall, across the bridge. When I get out of the truck, I'm running. We have these little city bins. We gotta unlock and take these little things out and dump. But I'm not walking, I'm running. It's one of the best ways of staying in shape.
Oh yeah.
And in a month and a half, approximately a month and a half ago, it was a good thing I didn't see this. But we're over by the comedy club, coming off a street, and all of a sudden my partner sees a guy officer running after him. I looked at my partner, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't see that because I would have jumped off the truck and joined in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or it'd probably be plenty of that in Spokane.
Oh, it's you have so many incidences going on.
Yeah,
it's because we work around so many homeless. It's disheartening. It's sad to see where some of these people are at. I used to do drug counseling as a probation officer. For juveniles, adults. It's when you're hooked, it's hard.
Oh yeah. Well, especially now. Drugs have changed a lot. That entire landscape's changed a ton in the last 10, 15 years. But it's got to be wild, unique perspective because if you're a trash guy over there and you're running at 4:30 in the morning in Spokane, that's a vastly different community than what you come home to.
Oh, definitely. It's I mean, you don't see anything like that on this side of the fence.
No.
It's one of those things where, I try to separate my work, leave it at the door when I leave work. Because when I was a probation officer, I mean, I took work home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it was on my laptop, doing reports at home or whatnot, I was very proud of my work, but I cared about the community in which I worked in. And I cared about, the juveniles I worked with, getting inside their heads, even the adults when I was a gang unit officer, understanding them, where they came from, their backgrounds. It was I know I touched a lot of people's lives, and in us as officers, we know we do. Sometimes we don't find out until years later. So, which is pretty fascinating, because I had one of those stories, and it was it was, I worked in juvenile hall in 1994. I had a young kid, Isaiah Negrete. This kid drove me up the wall. He wasn't a hardcore gang member. He would write his gang on paper and whatnot, because kids would steal pens, pencils, stuff like that from school. And I'm like, but his writing, his artistry was so phenomenal. I'm like, I will make you a deal. I will get you sketch pad and colored pencils while I'm on duty, and you draw stuff. Stop writing your gang stuff. So while he was in our custody in my unit, which was probably for about a good couple months, push that kid. I kept pushing him. And he would call home, talk to his dad, and tell his dad about me. And so I went to a gang conference up in Santa Barbara, and, I told the kid, I'm like, oh, I'm heading up to Santa Barbara. My dad's tattoo shop is up there. I'm like, okay, if I got the time, I'll go meet your dad and talk to him. I walked through the door. He walked through the back door, looked at me. You're Mr. M. I'm like, Mr. Negrete. He came up to me. He didn't shake my hand. He hugged me. He goes, thank you for doing what you're doing with my kid. Because Isaiah was one of the first kids that I'd actually worked with outside the box. And, because this kid was good. Well, I was driving a limo. I worked a part-time job doing bodyguard work and driving a limo in Hollywood in the early 2000s when I was in the gang unit. And I was in Hollywood, and I had read an article about how Isaiah and his dad were at this particular tattoo shop. I'm like, okay, it's close to midnight. I'm like, I'll take a chance. I walk in the door, and I'm looking at all the artwork on the wall. I hear behind me, Mr. M. This is 7 years later. I turn around, I'm like, Isaiah? He walked up to me, hugged me. He was literally in tears. He goes, thank you for telling me to stay with my dad. Because I told him, I said, look, you want to be successful? Because I found out who his dad was. His dad's one of the most prominent tattoo artists on this planet. I mean, he has a reputation that is impeccable. And dad is still going to this day. Suffice to say, Isaiah a few years ago died of an overdose. Damn. And his dad, I keep in contact with his dad, say hello and whatnot. I keep telling his dad, I'll come down and get some artwork done from you, because when I saw Isaiah that night, and that was before 9/11, Isaiah looks at me and goes, I'll give you anything you want, Mr. M. Anything. So I'm like, I'm simple. I'm just a simple man. I really am. I'm like, okay, what I want is, because part of it is faith, I had him do the barbed wire with what's above the cross. And he even asked, what does that mean? I told him what it meant, to my understanding. Coming up as a Catholic means King of the Jews. So that's all you want? I'm like, dude, it's from you. and that's what got him. He went on to do or have a celebrity clientele like Selena Gomez and other young stars that he would tattoo. Dad's still going. I mean, I think Dad must be in his early 70s, but he's still an excellent tattoo artist.
Yeah, but fentanyl got him, huh?
That was part of it. Yeah,
Sucks.
so it's in Mr. Negrete has lost a couple sons. One to gang violence, I believe, and then Isaiah was done to drugs.
Yeah.
Dang. So to switch gears to local, what are you running for up here in North Idaho?
Kootenai County Commissioner. District 2. And District 2 encompasses Sherman right here, south side of Sherman, all the way down to Benoit County, at the border right there.
Yep.
Includes the lake, the whole bit. And like I previously said to some of your partners, I left the city just, I wanted to die a country boy.
Yeah.
That's where I live on the reservation.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned Elder Road. I've spent some time down there.
Yeah.
I used to go patrol, it's 57 down there, right? Highway 57 that goes into the casino. It's a 2-mile stretch between the casino and Washington.
Yes.
Probably right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people tried to, backdoor 90.
Well, even Elder Road, we have so many speeders on the weekends. I hear bikes just open up, and we just had a Kootenai County deputy giving tickets out there. I'm like, I down this road, I'm going to have to sit down with Sheriff Norris, and I'm going to probably beg him, can you send that deputy out maybe like 3 to 5 times a month, please? Because it's just ridiculous. The amount of speed that people are doing on Elder, because it's a clear shot.
Oh, yeah.
I leave in the middle of the night basically, and I'm afraid of hitting a elk or a deer.
Sure.
Don't want to do it. So
what's it like living on the res? That's a big question for a lot of people to move out here.
It is quiet. It is really quiet. Except my neighbor does us a favor by taking out some of the coyotes in the area. So. Because we have a lot of chickens on our property, and we have 4 goats. So never had problems with wolves, but the coyotes, they come and go, and and I have a few dogs that go out. They get along with the chickens. They go out and mark their territories. So
I don't want to brag, but I've got 5 goats.
It's
a goat competition.
I have 3 Nigerian dwarf goats, and I've got a meat goat that I saved from my neighbor who was going to slaughter.
Former meat goat.
Yeah,
not anymore.
Yeah, but he's one of he's so big. He looks so overweight. But my female Nigerian dwarf goat, she's the alpha female. She drives all of them.
Yeah.
So
cool. I have not had any coyote issues yet either, but I also have a neighbor who has a suppressed rifle, and he'll be down in the field much below my property, and he'll call him in and shoot him down there. I'm like, well, cool.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All of them know.
Yeah.
Coming up here over by the trash dump, we have at least a dozen pair of bald eagles that are, they're full-time residents. And I constantly see them flying over. Well, one of them came out to our house and swooped down and just sliced one of my chickens open. Oh, my wife was freaking out. And she's yelling at the bird. Bird just looks up at her. I'm like, you're a protected species. That's what you're doing, right?
Nothing you can do about
Try it,
that.
guy.
Exactly.
Got tired of eating trash. You wanted something fresh.
So she released the hounds out to the yard, and eventually the eagle took off.
Yeah,
that's fair. What makes you want to run from office, and who are you running against?
Bruce Matari is the incumbent.
Okay.
And what makes me want to run, other than myself just being a voice for the people, because of your backgrounds, and part of my background was being a Mexican Mafia specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I found out several years ago that we call them the 4 horsemen, 4 captains from the San Diego area were sent up here by the Mexican Mafia, and they made their home in Coeur d'Alene here for approximately a year. I was one of the voices on Facebook complaining about it and hoping that maybe the FBI or Kootenai County Sheriff's is looking into it, and I cornered probably a good dozen deputies, and all the deputies reassured me, oh, they're going to become bear food, or they're being investigated. And I'm like, okay, good. Well, nothing came of it, and they ended up moving over to Spokane. And in our compound, they service Spokane PD's vehicles. I know what lieutenants and sergeants drive, so every once in a while I'll talk to a lieutenant or sergeant, hit them up. Those guys don't even have the resources. They only have 2 gang detectives.
Really?
No gang officers.
Wow.
And what's really interesting, in our corridor that we service, I'm starting to see the names of gangs that I dealt with in Los Angeles up on walls now. So
it only makes sense they'd be coming this way sooner or later. Hopefully, selfishly, they stay on the Washington side, but there's going to be crossover.
Well, they, from what I found out, they're responsible for all the human trafficking and the fentanyl that comes up into this region. I verified that through my LA resources I have, former and current officers, and there's a couple guys that were on my gang caseload whom I still speak to.
So as commissioner, I mean, what power do you think you would have to help that situation? Is that the goal?
In working with the sheriff and Sheriff Norris, it's an issue that, sitting down with him and trying to figure out how we can better the community to get this stuff out of our community. But there's roughly 40 other departments that Commissioner works with, and some of those issues, I've had people come to me about, everything from the transit issue to the waste management issue, water issue, and just water. Water's life up here.
Yeah.
Without water, we're done, because I came from a city, Las Vegas, I spent 16 years in. And to see what was going on with Lake Mead, they keep building and building and building, and there's going to be repercussions, because Lake Mead is getting lower every year, and you can't seed cloud enough to create enough rain to fill that lake up. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to find other sources to get water pumped into there. It is a recreation area, and it's still used for fishing, boating, but it is depleting every year, and the more population that comes in. I look at the Rathdrum Aquifer and the lake itself, and what's very interesting, I'm working with a water expert. She works in Spokane, and interestingly enough, I brought up, hey, look, I'm running for Kootenai County Commissioner. Are there any issues you have heard about in this region with the aquifers, the lake? And she said, you know what? With the lake, the current flips every so often. They don't know when. It just flips. And she goes, she stated to me that if it flipped, all that sediment on the bottom would be disturbed, and you have heavy metals, mercury from all the logging days. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what? So what are you talking about? She goes, well, pretty much like a environmental disaster. I mean, I'm not doom and gloom. I'm just listening to an expert here. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this is an issue that's being, where the can is being kicked down the road. But I brought it up to people that live around the lake, especially that are politically, connected. And it's an issue that I want to take a look at, along with the aquifer, because that aquifer up in the Rathdrum area services roughly 500,000 people, and people in Spokane as well. And they say it has about 10 trillion gallons, and you have so many politicians that talk about responsible growth. We are a town that relies heavily on tourism. Myself personally, and because of the background my dad had, background being in government that I have, having gone to college and obtained a degree in business, I would like to try to pursue companies to try to bring them to like Post Falls to, bring in more tax money.
Sure.
More jobs, maybe like a tech company. I wish somebody would have reached out to Lindsay Snyder, who is the owner of In-N-Out Burger, because right now it's out of Boise. I believe their warehouse is somewhere that they're building is somewhere between 700,000 to 1 million square foot.
Wow, it's a lot of potatoes.
It's going to be a huge processing center, and I'm like, how come somebody at our state level or even our local level didn't attempt to get a hold of her here to try to bring her up here, because I do believe that we have room in Post Falls possibly for a center like that.
Post Falls probably does. I honestly wonder if it's because potatoes are grown in southern Idaho and they do a lot of French fries, and maybe it makes more sense economically for them to just truck them in right that way. You mentioned transit problem. Tell me more about that.
Well, the transit problem, I mean, with buses, the people who have mobility problems, that are handicapped. I've had people come to me and I've told them and said, look, that is an issue that should be left up to the cities to decide, not the county. You have an entity like Spokane Transit that has put on the table that they want to bring their buses out here. And I've had people come to me and tell me, well, we're afraid of like the homeless getting on buses, and then they'll make their, encampments over here, or it'll just bring more crime or whatnot. And I'm like, I understand that, but I would have to look at statistics regarding those issues to see if they hold up or not.
I don't know if we could find any. I have that's a genuine concern of mine too, because it makes sense. I mean, that's how homeless people get around, and if I could see that being an issue. Who was it we had on that had another great idea? Instead of us as a community subsidizing transit, it was subsidizing Uber drivers instead. And doing it on a completely local level where the I think it was Brent Reagan, where the population can make money themselves. And now you've got a subsidized ride share program, basically through Uber or whatever, that people think it can get around that way, and it doesn't necessarily connect Spokane and Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, I would be one of those from working patrol here. If there was a direct shot from downtown Spokane to Coeur d'Alene, I would be opposed to that.
Seems like trouble.
I think the benefit that you would get would be outweighed by what you'd get in return. And I understand that commuting, people need to commute for work and stuff like that. But so that was a creative subsidy for, a modern solution for a modern problem. Because I think a lot of people now, public transit anyways has a bit of a negative connotation, especially now. And I don't know if that'd be, if we'd have the ability to buck that trend.
Some of my finest altercations in life have been on public transit. So.
Some of my finest altercations. I like it. But truly now, everybody's jobs now are so much different. It's not like they're transiting to an area of like an employment, like an industrial complex. Traditionally, people go downtown. That's where they go to work. But now so many jobs are either, telework, or they are, industry-based for that city. And in Coeur d'Alene, that is tourism. So you mentioned tech. In your mind, what tech company do you think would be ideally suited for here?
I couldn't tell you, because you'd have to look at the market for workers. What are the age groups of people? It's who would they be able to access up here to employ?
Right.
I don't know those stats. It's, having younger children, they do stay away from video games, I'll tell you that. A lot of these younger people are just, it seems to me that a lot of them are stuck behind playing video games. I did too when I was younger, but there was a day where I just put it down. But as in a particular company, I don't know, but all I know is that the Boise area has a chip manufacturer, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm conflicted when it comes to tech companies. I really am, because just when you've got tech companies, data centers can become more of a thing, and I know that can be a revenue generator. But when I'm watching Kootenai Electric bump up their rates significantly, especially during peak hours, and understanding the power draw, for AI and data centers and tech. Stuff just makes me nervous, man. And I'm so protective of the culture of North Idaho. What drew you here? It's just trying to retain it. It's such a mixed bag.
Yeah, and admittedly, we don't know enough about it. No, none of us are experts on this thing, but I would default to that concerns me because, and I've been corrected on this, not all tech people are liberal. I understand that. But there is a large contingent of that. And when you start bringing in these businesses, now you're opening doors to inviting population that whose values and beliefs don't necessarily align with ours here already.
And I feel that from people all the time up here. Oh, these Californians and all these other people. Folks, I grew up in California. In 1986, when I was 18, I registered with the Republican Party. Reagan was in office. And my dad was conservative. I've always been a conservative, but there's such a fear of all these people moving up here. And I know that people want to keep this way of life. That's why I moved up here, because I totally agree and back the way of life up here. The hunting, the fishing, one of my sons is more moderate, maybe leans to the left a little bit, but he loves the outdoors. My oldest son, who's next door, who's hoping that the interest rates drop within the next 4 or 5 months, would love to buy a house on this side, particularly like up in Hayden. He's just waiting for the market. He's further conservative than I am.
Mm-hmm. Tell him just to buy it now and refinance later. Trust me. Yeah. Home prices are going to keep going up, and he's going to ride that game forever and lose his mind.
Oh, if I told you what I'll tell you guys off the air what I bought my house for and what it's worth now. It's like,
I believe it.
Oh Lord, I'm like, oh no.
Tell him to do an adjustable rate mortgage for 5-7 years, and then flip that thing over. Get in the game.
Well, don't wait. That way you don't have the competition. If the interest rates drop 2 points, then
it's going to be game on.
Yeah, it's going to be competitive.
But getting back to the commissioner aspect, look, there's a lot of division in politics right now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like the division because when you're a politician, you need your constituents. There is no I in team. And all I can tell you is that, I'm not going to harp on, what, Mr. Matari is doing this or that. I hate mudslinging.
Yeah.
There's enough information out there if you search for it on people. All I can tell you is this, is that I live on a reservation that has problems. I like to speak to the tribal police often. My neighbor across the way is a retired tribal police officer. I've spoken to a prominent member that sits on the Council of Elders for the tribe. The division has to stop. And I love bringing people together. I mean, my team, my political team that I have, all these guys are in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're working their butts off. It's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where I'm not a micromanager. Even when I was a gang officer, I would be out on the streets, even alone, and cruising by, these juveniles' houses, 9 o'clock, parked, watching, if you want to call that micromanaging, but working closely with employees. If I were a sitting commissioner, everybody would know who I am because I would be rolling through offices just to say hello. Mm-hmm. How are you doing? Because people, jobs are tough. Some of these responsibilities that these people have at the county level, there's some tough jobs. I had an inspector who came out to my house after a project was done, and the GC's telling me one thing. I'm like, I'm going to call this inspector. and he became a little defensive, and I understood where he was coming from. I'm like, look, I'm trying to get both sides of the story so I can just narrow down the truth. As an investigator, that's what you do. You get the evidence, accumulate it, and then put forth the best thing on paper that you can for a report.
Yep.
To move on. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. I'm like, but I would just be the type that, I've told people that if other than having to sit in chambers with other commissioners, I would be out in the community, whether it's rolling through offices, just saying hi, talking to the directors of those offices, or just spending time down at the Worley Community Center where I can make myself accessible to constituents. And, I'm not going to harp on, I feel neglected and this and that. You have to look at the numbers on things to understand where the money's going, what can be done, better with it, new ideas that can be implemented, and I do have a lot of ideas that, I don't want to throw too many ideas out there that my opponent would use, but there's a lot of cost savings that can be saved in regards to other departments. It's and it's not an LA-based model. It's just being a manager that knows how to work with money and where it should be placed at.
What you mentioned the aquifer being a major issue, potentially transit. What are some of the other issues that you think Kootenai County is facing in the next 5 years?
Well, the waste management.
That's the other one.
I'm getting acclimated with that issue right now. The what do they call the station up here? The
transfer station.
The transfer station. The dumps. I mean, even though it's on the reservation, I mean, every time I pass the dump over towards Worley, I constantly smell methane. And I work.
Do they collect it there?
See, I don't know if they do or they don't.
Okay.
But I'm I work closely with a supervisor of mine on issues like that because he goes to Seattle and testifies on behalf of all the issues that are going on with all the waste issues that we're dealing with. I mean, we have what we call the burner. It's out in Arroway Heights, and basically they have a way of burning trash clean, and they generate $90 million in electricity every year.
Oh,
our department is self-sufficient, and we're the only one, probably one of the only departments that are that self-sufficient, because that department built that burner, and they operate it too.
So they burn trash, generate electricity, and that could be a viable option for North Idaho.
I don't know if the funds could be there, because it is very expensive to build one of these.
I was going to say, what's the capital expense on something like that? Any idea?
Roughly, that plant, if it were built now, probably about $250 million.
Oh yeah, that would take a while to make up.
It would take a long time to make up. I mean, these were things that probably should have been thought of way back.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, I think, is people always have a hard time forecasting growth and planning ahead for that. We have that on our real estate team all the time. We just
that's true.
that today. So I think that's probably a factor there. But other than that, I mean, waste management, from my point of view, seems pretty good over here. Other than my biggest beef is that they went down from 2,000 pounds a day to 1,000 pounds a day for free, and that really bummed me out.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, there's every time I go to the transfer station, there's people there. It's packed. We have a large population dumping trash.
And in departments like that, have to come up with ways to, it deals with cents and dollars. Mm-hmm. That's all it deals with. At the end of the day, it deals with budgetary items. I'm looking at. I'm not placing blame on anybody about this, because it's because I have yet to sit down with Sheriff Norris. I've been kind of invited to speak to him, so and I know I will. I'll give him a call. We're dealing with the sheriff's department that is taking roughly 60% of the Kootenai County budget, and we're up to $144 million budget. 60% of that is going to them. And, you know, trying to figure out ways of bringing down their costs. You know, the cost of taking care of a prisoner is through the roof. Mm-hmm. You know, housing a prisoner. You know, they just went before the board and they asked for $2.5 million more for overtime expenditures. So these are things that I've seen in Los Angeles, you know, play out with the sheriff's department, you know, probation department. It does take time to gain control of a large budget like that. I understand that, you know, because you do have a lot of people that are like angry about it. I understand it, you know, but I'm not in the position where I can tell you, okay, this is going to be done, this is going to be done, because if I were city commissioner, I'd be looking at all the budgetary items that are listed by the sheriff's department. You know, look, departments make mistakes. You know, you have to look 5 miles down the road instead of 1 mile. You know, a lot of people brought up, like, say, the helicopter issue. It runs $2,000 to $3,000 an hour. Put a man in that, you know, and then they listed it as a 501c3. They had the insurance issue and all this other stuff. So I'm like, how come somebody couldn't look farther down the road and say, how about if we just use a military drone? How much does a military drone cost? You know, I mean, there were contributors to that. There were 5 entities that threw in money for that helicopter. You know, one of them was the tribe, but why couldn't somebody say, hey, look, let's look at these, you know, these drones. I mean, my brother-in-law, who's the highway patrolman, you know, up in Northern California, I'm like, hey, Jeremy, I see a day where units will have drones on top of them.
Oh, yeah.
And you press a button, and if you're on a high-speed pursuit, it'll just shut that car down using an EMP device. How about that? You know, technology's here.
Yeah, it's hard to adopt it. You know, it takes a time. You know, like departments
research.
It takes time to adopt the right policy. All these things.
Yeah.
I don't know what the mission set of the helicopter here is in Kootenai County. Do they do rescues? Do they have hoist capabilities or anything like that?
No, they didn't.
Okay,
because they always would call in Spokane.
So it's just,
you know. It was a more patrol, surveillance, stuff like that. But it's been grounded for a while. And it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, can we move on and maybe look at something else?
Was that more public or backlash that it was grounded? I think there was some loud voices that eventually got that.
Why?
Grounded.
Cost?
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. I think there was some backlash.
And a lot of departments, I'm sure Coeur d'Alene has drone technology now. I think it's just getting a drone big enough that can fly for an extended period of time like a helicopter can, or go to places that a helicopter can. I know, I got a buddy who works for Bonner County Sheriff, and he flies a drone for them, and it's extremely useful for search and rescue because it has thermal. But it's probably got 20 minutes of flight time.
Okay.
So it could be, but I know if you scale up the drone, I'm sure you can increase that. Then increase the cost.
Last year, a couple guys, and I was standing right next to a couple workers, a couple guys I work with, and we see this huge drone go up about like 400 or 500 feet, and the guys are like, "Let's go find out what it is." I didn't go with them. They came back. They found out guy works for the DEA.
Huh.
And he outrightly said, "Oh, we're surveilling a property around here." So, and one of my buddies asked him, "How far can you see with that thing?" Approximately 2 miles.
Wow. So I mean, it could be a viable option. I don't know. I could see that in the future if they're not doing rescues or something, that they would all go that way. Because you're right, it's extremely expensive to put up a.
Yeah, it's just regarding rescues. It's just, to my understanding, it's just easier calling in Spokane with their chopper because they have that capability.
Yeah,
it's so.
Yeah, no, that's tough because I'm pretty familiar with that, and they've got an MOU with Spokane County as well, where oftentimes we can use their Air One unit, but that has an expense to it too. I mean, with an operating MOU from an outside entity, I know that they've got some expenses with it.
There's Two Bear Air up here, right? Is that the other one? That's the free one.
Yeah,
flown out of Montana?
Search and rescue. Mm-hmm. I mean, they'll come over for big search and rescue missions. They've been awesome, but they're not always available. A lot of it's I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Like, how much do I want to rely on an outside agency for a service that's almost a necessity in modern day policing? Not to say that it has to be a manned aerial aircraft, but I can tell you that for me, I'm big on safety of the boots on the ground. And if it's an asset that will make that safer, and whether it's manned or unmanned, it's tough. Like I said, I just look at it and say, I don't know if I want to rely on agency out of a different state to do it. If you were, I'm curious, so it sounds like some cost savings in there for the sheriff's office. Would you, in your position as a county commissioner, would that money get returned to the taxpayer? Or would you reallocate it to other parts of the county?
I know there are people that would love for me to say that it would be returned back to the taxpayer. I would like to see it reallocated into something that is necessary. In what that is, I couldn't tell you because I'm not there yet. But something that is necessary. I'm looking at how there were ARPA funds, and this is a subject I'm getting into. To my understanding, several years ago, there were ARPA funds that were used for the courthouse to build that out, and a lot of people are angry about it because they believe that those ARPA funds should have been returned back to the community. So that's an issue that I'm just starting to delve into and try to understand. There's the Justice Fund, which, enables sheriffs and the county to use those funds for various items. So this is new stuff that I'm just beginning to understand. Mm-hmm. When I had the ability, because I did a tour of duty at my headquarters in Downey, and I saw how the biggest probation department in the world operated. I worked in recruitment and exams for a little bit, worked for and with HR, and got to see how budgets and everything were put together. And it's like now I'm at this level. It's like getting my hands dirty and just digging in and understanding all the numbers and everything in all the departments that all the commissioners have to deal with. Mm-hmm. So,
there's a lot that goes into it. I know that courthouse building, and we had Bruce Matari on, gosh, it's been a couple of years, or at least over a year now. He came on and he was talking about that, and it was kind of a fiasco for a while with a budget that kept expanding. And he was looking for accountability on that. Obviously it's built, so I don't know what the outcome was, but it's here now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's a tough deal because I'll be unapologetically, I'm pretty proactive in my support of our local law enforcement here. But one of the number one factors, because now we're on a real estate team, right? And Idaho is one of the fastest growing states in the country. And a big part of the reason, what's the number one factor you hear from people?
Pay.
Yeah. Well, why they want.
Why they want to move here?
Yeah,
because they need somewhere that matches their values.
Right. And safety. Yeah. Right. Idaho's ranked 50th out of 50 in projected crime rate. Washington's ranked 4th. So it's tough when you talk about like local sheriff's office and PDs and all that. And you didn't mention anything about. Do you think the sheriff's office is overstaffed?
I don't. The total numbers I couldn't tell you. I find it a little embarrassing when they went before the commissioners and Commissioner Matari spoke up because the way they averaged the overtime pay was based upon a sergeant's pay. That's not how you average pay out. You get everybody's pay and then divide by the number. Were they just using the sergeant's? Like, is the
deputy's normal pay? Excuse me, deputy's overtime pay the same rate as a sergeant's normal pay? Is that what they're saying?
Well, from the video I saw, Mr. Patari basically, I believe, called them out on it and said, "No, you need to go back and give me better numbers."
I gotcha.
Break
it down between all of them.
Yeah,
because sergeants get overtime as well.
Do you end up paying it on the front end or the back end? Right now their overtime budget, and I still serve with one in the reserves that works at Kootenai County, that works in the jail, and right now they're on mandatory overtime. Those guys, they can't keep anybody in there qualified. I mean, it's tough when you can literally step over the border and get paid more almost immediately. And we have a lot of those. One of the guys that you met at the gas station, he is a merc over on the Washington side and then flees back to home base in Idaho. So it's a mixed bag. How do you retain, right? How do you retain? And that would be an expense on the front end, vice paying the overtime on the back end.
Well, also trying to get young people to apply for a job that's one of the most dangerous in the country and pay them well enough for it. I saw that in Los Angeles growing up. I mean, my dad spent 45 years as an LA County Sheriff. Started out as a regular, became a Class A reserve, rose all the way up to commander. The only reason why that my dad basically left as a full-time but kept his reserve status is that he made more money than the sheriff himself owning his own businesses. How do you keep people on? How do you retain them? It has to be through pay. You have to give that incentive. I know that, Spokane's a larger agency, but they pay their officers well. That's why you have, the North Idaho, patrol up here? The state patrol?
Oh, ISP.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing that they're leaving too to go next door.
I think, are they the lowest paid up here?
Yeah, they have a tough.
Crazy.
That's a different deal because they get paid across the entire state. And obviously, if you're an officer in Driggs or you're a trooper in Driggs, your cost of living is significantly different. House prices are different. So ISP runs into a tough deal because if you get stationed in District 1, which is up here, your pay is still set with the rest of the state, and it's expensive to live up here. They have a bit of a tough deal.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to manage.
But looking at numbers, it all boils down to the numbers. I'm trying to get numbers to look at, especially I'll bring up an issue. And I even threw this out at Mr. Matari. Depending upon what level the prisoner is, if they're white collar, why can't you work with the judges on trying to get them out and put them on GPS ankle bracelet? Because the technology is there to the point where if they break that off, the company's notified immediately, which goes to, the sheriff's department, police department, notify them. And, I would think that if, because dealing with violent offenders is a total different animal than dealing with somebody who's a white collar crime criminal. And I don't know the stats or breakdown on the type of prisoners that Sheriff Norris has, but it's an idea. I mean, even with the fact that I believe the sheriff has to deal with juvenile probation, it's you have to look at technology and how it's being implemented because it's a lot cheaper to do that than to basically babysit. But I would love to see the stats, and maybe Sheriff Norris would allow me to see those when I sit down with them. Because I would love to know, like, the breakdown on prisoners. Like, are they allowed to have bail? Do you think we can work with the judges on that and put them on GPS ankle bracelet?
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know the rate of reoffense. Whether they cut the bracelet off or not, it's not going to keep them from sexually assaulting someone or doing these other things necessarily. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that. I'm not sure.
Because in LA, we would have a tally score, regarding just different things regarding, what the offense was, down to if they've violated anything in the past, if they were on probation or parole, any violations. It was just a whole tally. And basically the score would add up to something that would make them eligible for release or not. It's just,
I'm afraid that would affect the crime rate that we have here right now. That's just my fear off the top, is that it's such low crime. If we start implementing policies like that to save money, I don't know. But my fear is that it would increase the crime rate because I don't know how many the percentage of, but a lot of people I contacted were wearing an ankle monitor, when I was a cop down south. And it's like,
well, part of the reason our crime rate's as low as it is because of the reputation that we have here, because our justice system has some teeth.
Right. When people are on probation, like, they just don't give a shit as much. I feel like there's not enough teeth in that business.
I don't know. I've dealt with people on probation here. I had a one of my neighbor's friends was on probation, and and I just wanted to see what it was like. So his probation officer was pretty good. She kept him on the straight and narrow. And then I had recently another neighbor of mine whose son went through the rider program, cleaned up the whole bit. And, the probation officers, you have to keep that demeanor that you're, a little bit mean. Keep your people in check.
Yeah. You got to be a shark. And I wonder, because now I'm thinking this through, doing that, you would then have to hire more probation officers, I'm sure. I wonder if it would be a wash. I don't know.
And that's, the state does that,
but state runs probation?
Yeah, state runs probation, parole for adults.
Okay.
But the juvenile aspect falls under, I believe, the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Or it might be its entirely own department. But it's one of those things where it's like, can we speak about these issues more?
Everything's worth having a conversation about, for sure, right?
Try to come up with, ways of how cost effective these things are. Mm-hmm. Would they benefit the community? They're at least, worth talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Even, I think back to cases where they get pled down, right? What's the original offense, and then what's it ultimately get pled down to, right? Like if it was a violent crime initially, and then it goes to a disturbing the peace or something.
Or 10th DUI, and then they get probation. And
yeah.
I can tell you what's going to happen.
That's a hard, man. That's a lot, because we had Jeremy Heil on. He's a captain at the jail. So he oversees all that. And you get an interesting introspective into what the actual consequences are of over-distributing riders. Because it sounds great on the front end. Yeah. It's like, they aren't incarcerated as long, it's not going to cost us as much, but then they come back on probation, and probation is paid by the state, so then it's based on population. But then you have a disproportionate number of people that are on probation up here, then their caseload gets light, and then there's no teeth in probation, right? So it's this weird balancing act of trying to figure, it takes a next-level brain to figure that out. And no, go ahead. Well,
and also too, you have to look at even though it's the state that's dealing with that, what is the failure rate of those people? Mm-hmm. Because they have stats on that. Even at the juvenile level, are they the same juveniles getting into trouble? Who's intervening? What organizations do we have? Any outreach? Any churches that can help them? Because you do have dysfunctional families that do live up here. And so what can we do as a community to come together to try to solve that problem before it explodes? Mm-hmm. Because I saw that in LA all the time. Mm-hmm. My in-depth analysis when I would speak to somebody that was on my caseload, tell me your background. Dad was never there, latchkey kid, so he went out and found respect with the older homeboys. He got love from them, got jumped in, the same thing over and over and over again. And that's why you have like organizations like Homeboy Industries, run by the Catholic priest and Father Greg. And you have organizations like that they're trying to stop it. Mm-hmm. It's, what do we have up here? And that's what I'm attempting to try to find out.
Yeah.
And I work, just a side issue, but working with as many general contractors I've worked with on my property, those guys, they want to see the permits kept at a low price. It's everything deals with dollars and cents, and I understand that. I know a lot of these departments are professional. They're represented by really good people, mm-hmm. hard workers. But, especially with the sheriff's department, how do you go about retaining people when guys are disgruntled that, hey, look, if I go over there, I'm getting paid about 20% more, or, like when my brother-in-law got hired on by California Highway Patrol, he was either the last class or next to last class that got the 3% PERS.
Yep.
I saw firsthand, because I used to work with Glendale PD, I would go into their territory because it was next door to where I worked, help their gang unit out. But I would also hear management talking about how the 3% PERS was destroying the budget of their department. So you've got to look 10 miles down the road, not just 1 mile, 10 miles.
Yeah.
When it deals with money issues, because we have an ever increasing budget every year. It's growing, and it's a monster that you can't control.
Right.
More people keep moving up here. There's more home builders that want to build up here. We just had Silverwood sold to a family that operates a good dozen amusement parks across the nation. I grew up in Southern California. I saw how Knott's Berry Farm became, and how Disneyland became, and how they are the way they are now. That whole infrastructure, and look up here. I'm like, are we going down that same path? And it's one of those things where I'm speaking to a lot of older people that want the growth to slow down. I understand that. But what is responsible growth? Responsible growth is different to every politician. So
I don't know how you slow it down, to be honest. I mean, I feel like to slow it down, you have to start trampling on people's constitutional rights to do whatever the hell they want with their own property, right? I mean, if someone wants to sell, how can we not let them sell? So I don't know. I understand your feeling. I mean, I wonder about that too, but I don't know how you would stop it.
When you live in an area where people look at you and say, God, that's nice. Well, I can tell you this. There was a reason why I moved on the reservation. And I don't go around tooting a horn saying that, my wife's great-grandmother was Native American. It's not about that. I knew that these guys could basically keep things from growing exponentially. And that's the tribe. So what was it? A couple years ago, they passed a law in the tribe that you cannot subdivide less than 20 acres. Can't do it anymore. I have 10. I can't subdivide my 10. But if you have 20 or more, say if you've got 40, you want to subdivide them into two 20s, you can do that. But nothing smaller than 20 acres now. I think that's great. We're
a smart move. Yeah,
we're a rural community. I have fields across the street from me that are, produce hay, wheat, barley, and I constantly see those farmers out there in the machines that are, tilling the fields and getting the fields ready, and I love being out there. I understand, people are in the city for a reason. They can only afford to buy so much or whatnot, but it's one of those things where the price of homes has just exploded.
Oh yeah, in the last 5-6 years. Yeah.
That's when we start talking about budgets, because you're right, the budget goes up every year and things cost a little bit more money, especially with infrastructure. The time to have addressed all this, in my opinion, was 10 or 15 years ago, when you had big developments going in and you had all these districts that were going in, and there was very few impact fees taken at the time when commissioners were there then, or
Yes.
city council members, because I dealt with this in Coeur d'Alene City. That was the time to actually go after impact fees, because that's going to be a further burden on the infrastructure, whether that's judicial, whether it's streets, whether it's sewage, whether it's water, whether it's whatever. There's going to be an infrastructure cost. And where people get frustrated that have lived here is they're now burdening a significant share of that structural enhancement to support a growing population. That's where I get a little bit frustrated, where it's like, well, where were you when there was, it's not like impact fees were something new, and you see people in charge and they were a part of the growth.
There was probably buddy deals going on back then.
They were
right?
in real
Small
estate.
town.
They were developing. They were part of a construction group. That's where I get a little frustrated, and I think that's where citizens of Idaho do as well.
And I don't want to see, because I hate taxes, I don't want to see taxes because I saw this in Los Angeles, where to get by for a couple years, 3.5 cent tax on all durable goods. It was for a year or two to raise enough money for them to scoot the budget by. I don't want to see taxes.
No, because they never go away, right?
Well, it's like, look, the only things you can't avoid in life are
Death and taxes.
yeah, and I think I'd rather deal with death than taxes.
That checks out.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, we are pushing over an hour. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
But
Thanks, Steve.
the election's coming up. Is it May 19th?
May 19th.
Okay, so make sure you guys get out and vote. Steve will be on there for District 1 County Commissioner.
District 2.
District 2, excuse
Yeah,
me.
Sherman to Benoit.
Gotcha.
Yep.
District 2
And what
County
you just
Commissioner.
said, I encourage people to get out and vote.
Right.
I mean, I constantly
Please.
I hear people all the time complain about things. And I'm like, did you vote? Well, no. Come on.
Right,
Get
the
out.
The voter
Yeah.
turnout numbers are pretty dismal when you see them. I mean, like, I don't know.
They
especially
are.
20-something percent. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So, yeah, I feel like if you don't go out and vote, then you have no leg to stand on when it comes to complaining about how things are done.
Yes, listen.
do it.
Exactly that.
To those folks out there that are listening that live here local, I constantly preach about how people from other states that have kind of gone a totally different direction than Idaho pay more attention to local politics. So make an honest man out of me. Please go out there, learn the values of the people that are running, learn what their policies are, and go make an informed voting decision.
And the one thing that I like to ask everybody that's listening to this, I am a blue collar worker. Okay. I'm highly educated. I have a college degree, the whole bit. But give me time to understand all the issues. And I tell people, come speak to me. I don't care if you build homes, if you're a real estate agent, come speak to me. Educate me. Mm-hmm. We are a team in this community. It's not it's everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, if you want me to be your voice, come speak with me.
Perfect way to leave it. Thanks,
Thanks.
Steve.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Steve.
gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
God bless.
Later.